This session is aimed at supplier organizations who would like to find out more about the carbon calculator. So if you're interested in understanding what the carbon calculator is, how it works, and how it can support your reporting requirements, then this session is for you. As part of this webinar, we're also going to give a quick introduction to the work that we have been doing with the Climate Action Group of the school. And we'll talk about all the e-learning modules and other benefits that you get by being part of this initiative. So let's begin by looking at the bigger picture. We can't really talk about the carbon calculator without first mentioning all the work that we have been doing with the Climate Action Group of the Supply Chain School. If you haven't heard about it, this group was founded about 3 years ago by a group of organizations who are partners of the school and who were really interested in taking action against carbon emissions, not only in their organizations, but also in their supply chains. The main purpose of the group is to get as many suppliers as possible reporting carbon emissions via this system. And we know already most of the carbon impact of an organization actually comes from the supply chain, which means that if we're really serious about reducing our carbon emissions, we really need to work collaboratively with our suppliers and start collecting data on where the carbon hotspots might be and where the opportunity lays. And that explains why most of you have been invited by your clients to start using the carbon calculator and start measuring your carbon impacts as well. Now, the Climate Action Group focuses on 3 main points, which are the ones you can see on the screen right now. The first one is cross-collaboration, and is basically what I explained before. This group is a perfect opportunity for clients and suppliers like yourselves to start working together to find better ways to manage carbon. It's also about building and sharing carbon knowledge within the industry, which is a point that I'm going to touch later on. And last but not least, the group really focuses on measuring actual performance, and here's where the carbon calculator plays a key role, as we're going to see later. I'd like to come back to the point around building and sharing carbon knowledge. So as a member of the Climate Action Group, all of you will get completely free access to all the e-learning material, videos, and carbon resources that we have available via the Supply Chain School. The website is supplychainschool.co.uk, and in there you can find all the information you need around carbon and other sustainability areas. Now, moving on to the next section. For those of you who haven't heard about the carbon calculator before, put it very simply, this is an online platform that was designed by the school to manage supply chains and specifically carbon data. So the idea was to design a system that could be used by supplier organizations like yourselves for free, and that could help you to identify your carbon producing activities and therefore indicate where your carbon hotspots are and where the opportunities for improvement are as well. So the very first feature and the most obvious one perhaps is the fact that this is a carbon calculator, which means that it will calculate your carbon emissions based on the activity data that you provide. We're not asking you to provide how many tons of carbon you produced. Instead, we're asking you to provide information such as how much electricity you have consumed in a given period, or how much diesel you have consumed for your plant and equipment, for example. And then based on that information, the system will calculate how much carbon your organization has produced based on that information. Now, the second feature that I'd like to mention here is what we call apportionment. And this is definitely one of the most unique features of this platform. And it basically means that once you submit your information and the system calculates your carbon impact, You will also have the opportunity to distribute your emissions among your clients based on financial turnover. So just as an example, if you have got two clients, client A and client B, and you know that client A represents 10% of your turnover, you can distribute 10% of your emissions to them. Then the third thing that I would like to mention are the two types of reports that you're going to find available in the carbon calculator. So the first one is what we call the simple report, or the simplified version of the report. And this was basically designed for supplier companies that already know their carbon emissions. They already know what their scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 figures are, and therefore they are only interested in apportioning this data among those clients. In this case, they can use the simple reports to enter these final figures, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, and jump straight onto the apportionment. Now, the second type of report, which is the most interesting option, is for those companies who do not know the carbon emissions that are part of their organization, and therefore would like to use this system to calculate that. If that is your case, the full report is what's going to help you to calculate your impact across several areas. Now, in terms of how frequently you are expected to report information, from the system perspective, you will see that there are three options. So you can either report your emissions on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, or annually. Annual reporting is a minimum requirement, but as I said, you can use any of these three options. I have to say that some of your clients might have very specific requirements when it comes to frequency. For example, they might be expecting you to report every quarter, for example. And if that's the case, please select the right reporting frequency to set up your account, because that's something that cannot be changed later on. You'll have to get in touch with us so that we can create a new account for you. So it's really important that before you set up an account for your organization in the system, you double check with your clients in case they have a specific reporting frequency in mind. And the last piece I wanted to talk about is data visualization. So basically, once you submit your information and you distribute this carbon data among your clients, the system will display your data through several dashboards where you'll be able to track your performance over time.
Everyone, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. So this is the landing page for the carbon calculator. You may have been sent it by one of your clients, or you can access it yourself by just using carbon.sustainabilitytool.com. And on the landing page, we do have support videos below. So if you'd like to refer to something after this meeting, you can. And we also have, at this point, our supplier's user guide if you would like to reference something. So how you can create your supplier account, you click this here, and then it asks you to fill in some of your details. So I'll just fill in mine, for example. And then here is your company name. This is important that you put the company name that you'd like as it would show in the carbon calculator. So for today, I'm just going to have Live Limited, and then the date. And then it asks to check that you're not a robot. And then you click these. Oh, I'll just skip this. And then once you click register, you will get an email sent to your email address that you've registered with, and it will provide you with a link, and you just need to open that link and it takes you back to the tool. So once you have done that, so once you've clicked that link, it will ask you to log in, and this will pop up, and it's to set up your user profile. Here it will just double check your company name that you'd like to use, and then you will click submit, and then straight away it's going to ask you the frequency of reporting that you would like. So this is kind of where you need to align, as Steph said, with your clients. If in doubt, pick the most regular reporting, so then you'll never miss the requirements that your client might ask, because more clients might ask in the future. So say I pick quarterly, your account is then created. So once it's loaded, it creates your account, and then you go straight into your report and apportionment section. The first question you will be asked is whether you already know your emissions. If you do, you just click yes, and then it will just ask you to fill in your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. But typically, people don't always know the emissions, and so this is why we created the carbon calculator. So I'll take you through those steps. Here we have the apportionment section. So these are for your clients, and we have a searchable list here where we have a list of all our partners. And the key non-partner client, as Steph mentioned. So if your partners aren't listed, any leftover apportionment that you'd like to perform, you can just put on non-partner client. For this, I'm going to pretend that Network Rail is one of my clients. I'm going to give them 10%. I'm going to give Build Space 30%, and then NG Bailey, I'm going to give 10. And say, for this is what I want to do for now. I might want to come back and change later. I can just click save, and then I can always come back to it at any point. It will save what I've done, and I can always adjust it there before I submit. So these are the different tabs. It's like the different categories that we've broken down our metrics into. So the first one is company transport. You'll notice that everything at the moment has a little red triangle. That's indicating that I haven't started any of these sections. So as I start to input data, like here for diesel car, I might have done 120 miles in diesel cars this month, and then you'll see it'll go yellow. So I've started entering, but I haven't completed. These little red stars show that this is a mandatory metric. I either need to put in a value or I need to mark it as not applicable, but I need to engage with that metric. So for petrol cars, I needed 10. And then I get to a non-mandatory metric. So here, would I like to add data on other types of company vehicles? Yep, I do. I've got a drop-down list. I've got a hybrid car that I use in my organisation, and we've done a lot of miles on that. And say I have no more company owned or controlled vehicles. So this is all the vehicles I own or control for my company, not third party, so it's not to do with employee commuting. I would click mark section complete, and then it's gone to a green tick because I've engaged with all of our metrics. Then I can click next to the next tab. So here we've got fossil fuels. As you can see, all the ones in bold are marked as mandatory, and the units change depending on the type of fuel. So say I don't use any diesel, I can click NA. Say I've got gas oil, I'm going to put 10, but maybe I want to type something about this, like C fuel report for my internal use. So I can always come back to look at my data in the future, look at my reports, and I want to look back on this. I can write a note to myself and so on. So I'm just going to put in some random numbers here. And then again, at the bottom, I've got, would I like to add data on other fossil fuels? And I'm going to click yes. And these are the other ones I would like. Let's say I'm using biomass. I'm going to put in 10 tons, and I can also mark that section as complete and move on. So the way it's broken up is in through all these tabs and all the metrics. These are all metrics that have been decided by the climate action group that Steph was speaking about. So we've done it in the most simple form. So the ones that are classed as mandatory are the ones that we really think are accessible for organisations to find, and the ones that are optional may be a bit more difficult to find, but it's to encourage people to then engage. So I'm going to click to fugitive emissions. We have the full list of fugitive emissions here, which is an extensive list, but say for my organisation, I haven't had any instances, so I'm going to move forward. And then for electricity, here we have grid electricity location based. So if you hover over the eye icon on any of our metrics, it gives you a definition. So this is my purchase from the grid, and this year, this quarter, I've used this much electricity, but I also do have a green tariff. So here I can put in the amount of market-based, which is green electricity that you can find on your energy bill. It will usually be a figure, not a percentage. So I can put in that 123 kilowatt hours of electricity came from a green source of energy. Say I don't know my carbon associated with that, I can just click through. Next, we've got materials. So for this section, this is focusing on product manufacturers for the time being. And here in the comments, we have an instruction. So if you're a product manufacturer, this section is required. And we want you to enter the amount of raw materials you buy for manufacturing to fabricate the products. But if you install products, you don't need to put any information in the section. So say I'm a product manufacturer, I click yes, and then I can select the raw materials that I use. I use 10 tons of clay, and I also use 123 tons of copper during this period, and then I can move on. Now this is third-party transport, so this is for all transport that your company does not own or control, so a lot of it will be employee commuting. If there's something that you don't collect currently, we suggest that maybe you send out a survey. You can also put in schemes like everyone using the Trainline app, so you can store all of your employee commuting associated with that in one area, so it's easy for you to access that data. So here I'm going to put through, I haven't got any diesel cars. I do have a diesel van. I don't have these, and these are the extra fields that we've got for other types of third-party travel at the moment. So we've got the electrics, the hybrids, we've also got air travel within the UK and internationally, and also train, national rail. But I'm going to say I don't have any of that data. And then we move on to our waste section. So this is another optional metric, but we do ask that if you don't collect waste data, you do explain why. So if I have clicked yes, I've got these are the types of waste I've got, and as you can see, they've got different destinations. So here we've got mixed packaging that's diverted from landfill, is going to landfill and recycled, and it's asked in tons again. So maybe I have 10 tons going to there, and then waste I've got recycled, I've also got 10 tons. If you've added a metric and then you decide that you don't want to fill in that metric anymore, you can just simply remove your figure and click as NA, and it just won't count into your dashboards. And I can move through here, and then we've also got water, which is also non-mandatory, and it also has that comment that if you don't collect water, you explain why, but if you did, it's looking at water consumption and treatment, and it's just in litres for this quarter. So I'd click 10. As you see here now, I've got all green ticks, so I've reported in every section, and now I'm able to submit my data. But if I wanted to go back to a section, if I wanted to go back to electricity and change it, I can simply just go back and change it before I submit. And it's always key, just before you submit, just to look at the top. So here I've been reporting for April 2020 to the 30th of June 2020. That's not my current date. I can select on that. If I wanted to be current, we also are allowing you to do historic data if you'd like to, if you have access to that, if you'd like to look at your trends over time, but I can change this to be whatever. So I'm going to change that to be for this period now. And then I will click submit. So you will get a dashboard when you log in, once you submitted data, that looks like this. You get these two tiles. So we're splitting up the data via carbon activities and by scope. So we'll click on scope first. So here we have scope 1, 2 scope 2s and scope 3. So scope 1 is all your direct emissions, so that's stuff like fossil fuels, company transport, fugitive emissions. Then you have scope 2, which is electricity. So here we've got market-based and location-based, depending on the green tariff. And then we've also got scope 3, and that is stuff like company transport, materials, water, waste. So you can interrogate the data like that. So now if you click on one of these here, if I clicked on scope 1, I can now see my scope 1 emissions appearing on a graph. I can hover over the graphs and I can see the absolute values. I can see where the data was reported, and if I scroll down, I can see the actual figures and when they were reported. And if I scroll down further, I can see where these emissions for scope, what scope am I on? Scope 1 are coming from. So I can see that I got a large amount of tons of carbon from gas oil during this period, and so on and so on. You can also select multiple indicators all to be on one graph, which allows comparison. So here I've selected all of my scopes, so I can see the majority of my carbon is coming from scope 1, followed by scope 3 emissions, and you can also unselect. Now, if we look at by activity, it's the same sort of thing. We've broken it down. You can see that they're kind of following the tabs, and we also have stuff like well to tank, which is to do with the amount of emissions that is taken from extracting a fuel to it going into your vehicle, so literally from the well to the tank. And the same with T&D, transmission and distribution, to do the electricity. Here we can look on stuff. So say I would like to look at materials. I get that graph again, and I get my values down the bottom. And something that we're looking forward to and we're going to put in place is also that you're going to be able to put your targets. So at the moment, the focus of the Climate Action Group and all the suppliers and partners involved is just kind of get our data in, kind of become more familiar with it, look at it, just get used to tracking. And once we've kind of got a data set there, we'd like everyone to add targets, and you'll be able to do this. They will add green and red targets, like a threshold, into your graphs, and then that will reflect in your tile. So say if you're meeting a target, it will be green. If you're not meeting a target, it will be red, and that's something we'd like to move forward. But yeah, again, on this, say I want to compare materials with fossil fuels, I can add fossil fuels, and immediately you can see that materials shrinks and fossil fuels is a much larger contributor to my carbon emissions. I can deselect that, and I can also select many more. So this is the dashboard. I also want to show you some support that we will send out after. Is to do with the reporting. So we've created these Excel spreadsheets. This one is for you guys, it's the FAQ for suppliers. We've put different categories here and some commonly asked questions and the answers. So like here, registration, I'm a supplier, how do I register? We've given you the links, the how-to videos, reporting questions. I'm a supplier, can I change my reporting frequency? If you select the wrong one, you need to contact us, stuff like that. So this kind of goes into data questions and also apportionment questions. And then we also have this Excel spreadsheet here. This is for if you would like, before you set up your account and before you start reporting, you'd like to get more engaged with your data, kind of collect it before you sit down and input it. We have the spreadsheet here, which is broken down into every section, all the tabs, as we just saw here, and it's showing where you can kind of get these data sources from. And then when you go into the tabs, it's showing the mandatory metrics in blue, followed by the optionals, where you can find the data sources and any conversion factors that are relevant. So say, because we collect our data in miles, say you get your data in kilometers, you can just input your numbers here, and then it will tell you what you need to put in miles into the system. So we've also got that for you. And this, it goes through all of the categories here, kind of showing you what is and isn't mandatory. See, like here for fusion emissions, there's no mandatory metrics, it's all optional. So we've also got this as a support tool, which Steph and I will send over to you after the meeting.
All the information that you're submitting here and all the carbon emissions or the calculations done by the system can be exported as well. So there is an export option in the system. Yeah, Leaf is showing that right now. That will enable you to export your indicators by period. So for example, if you are reporting data on a monthly basis, then you'll be able to report your data monthly or yearly, if that's the case as well. If you have any other questions around the system, please get in touch with us at info@sustainabilitytool.com, and we'll make sure to get back to you as soon as we can.